Hello, everyone. This is the second of our weekly Fireside chats with Father Earl. Thank you all for joining us today. Father Earl, for those of us who miss church, how can we stay connected?
Well, there are practical, pragmatic ways, and then there are kind of spiritual ways. I realize many of you know this already, but many may not. We've been pleased with how many people have been kind of tuning in, and the feedback we're getting is that at least for many people it's helpful. So pragmatically, how you can keep connected to the church is to worship with us. While we live stream at 10 o'clock on each Sunday, and during Holy Week we'll be having two services, Monday, Thursday, on Thursday night at 7:30, and then a Good Friday liturgy at 7:30 on Good Friday. And the good news is that all of those services are archived. I think there's something special when people can tune in to the live streaming. But if you can't, you're preoccupied, it doesn't really matter. They're archived there. It's a little, we've got to probably do a better job on our website where it says archive. It's not really clearly marked, but if you go, if you pull down the worship app, go to live streaming, there's a faint blue line that says that they're archived. So you can find all the services at any time. So that's one way you can stay connected. And I encourage you to treat the worship services not as a cognitive, rational, intellectual process, and not really observing it in some sense. But you try to do it to the best you can. And the reality is try to be a participant. If you don't have a prayer book, you might want to consider just contacting Amazon and getting one. If you don't have a hymnal, you could do that. This is only the second kind of fireside chat we've had. We've only had 3 services online, so we're learning each Sunday. But we feel this connection is important, and I think this is something that we will do continually forward at St. James. So I would say worship with us, live when possible, because I think it has a kind of existential experience to it psychologically. The other way is you can contact the office and sign up for our epistle that comes out regularly. They do a great job with that, so everything that's happening in the church is outlined. It gives you the direct links to come to the services as well. But I think one way to stay connected is with each other. It's a marvelous community and family here that love each other and support each other and care for each other. And so it's so easy during this crisis to just think about ourselves and our family, as we should. That's the place we should start, to stay safe and to be wise and to be prudent, to have, as they say now, an abundance of caution. I'm aware we've got a lot of new words in our vocabulary, like sheltering, that we've not had before in others, but with an abundance of caution. But outside of that, try to be intentional about identifying several people in the parish that might live alone, or have a small family, or their families are not close to them, and just give them a call, send them an email, shoot them a text. I find with my own children, one of the best ways to communicate is through a text. I'll get an answer back with the text, whereas if I leave an email sometime, it may be a week before I hear back. It's just today's world. So to stay connected is through worship, through the information portals, our website, and our epistle. I particularly encourage you to get on the epistle list. The way to do that is simply contact our wonderful parish administrator, Kay Gregg, and she will coordinate all of that for you. Staying connected is to the degree you can with one another. And I just got on Zoom this past week. I mean, you know, this guy has learned Zoom. This is like, when I go to a church, there's three things that's important to me. Do I like the people? Because if I like them, I can come to love them. And feel like I've got a good shot at bringing what they need? And then thirdly, will I learn something? Well, I knew I'd learn some things, important things coming here. I had no idea I'd be learning about, you know, live streaming telecommunication systems, being but I'm enjoying it, actually. I'm enjoying it very much. And it's just wonderful technology. That's such a obvious pedestrian phrase, but it is wonderful technology that we should never take for granted. It's a great way of being connected. So use the technology and use the resources that we have.
That's terrific. So taking a turn to a little more, a deeper question that's come in, many children and some adults ask, where is God in all of this? How can we answer this for our children and even for ourselves?
Complex question and yet simple question all at the same time. If you get a chance, as you know, our worship service, our last Sunday worship service on the fifth Sunday of Lent was recorded, and we are archiving that. So in my sermon, I addressed that, and I addressed it, I think, really in some detail. So if you'd like to kind of go down in that kind of spiritual, theological mind and look for some, I encourage you to check out the sermon from this past Sunday. Well, I think a lot of this is that people come to the church, to the Bible, from very different places and from very different theologies. I can only share some of my theology, which will be very different from some of you. As I said last week, I start with God's love. God is always with us. An image I use from time to time that some of you have heard is that it's sometimes hard for us to see God in the same way that fish are in the water. They don't see the water, but they are surrounded by it. They live by it. And oftentimes for us, particularly sometime during times of transition, we can't experience God at times. It does not mean God's not there. To the opposite, I think God is particularly with us in our pain and our confusion and our transition times and our crises. First of all, that's an act of faith. It's something I not only feel like I believe, it's not intellectual to me. I feel like I know it. I experience it. So it's remembering that. It's so easy for us to get caught up in the details of our lives that we just forget that. So remembering that we cannot separate ourselves from God. A phrase that I use, and clergy always run into the danger of having corny or simplistic phrases, but I use them anyway. I do believe that God, the phrases or images I use, that God is closer than our DNA, closer than our breath. Is not only the source of life, but is life-giving at all times. So, and how do we know that? We don't know that just that God pops down and tells us, except that we know it through the person of Christ. What Christ taught, how he lived, how he died, which we're getting ready to approach next week on Palm Sunday and during Holy Week. You learn a lot about how Christ in our lives by seeing his last week. So before that, how getting a sense of his identity, how his relationship with God, learning from that, what he taught and how he lived his life. I think that is the critical thing. And you learn that from the Bible. Increasingly, we're in a culture that people are becoming, unfortunately, biblically illiterate oftentimes. That's why we are intentional here at St. James. Even though it's an Episcopal Church, Episcopal Church sometimes is not known for its brilliant intellectual, theological exploration. We tend to be more cognitive than really studying the Bible, but I'm trying to change that. I deeply believe in Bible study, that in coming to understand the Gospels particularly. I'm asked oftentimes, oh, well, that's another thing. Another way you can stay connected is read the Bible. Radical concept. Start with Mark, shortest Gospel, the oldest Gospel. Read next Matthew and Luke. Both of those pick up what Mark has said. Something like 80% of all Mark is in Matthew, who tells the story slightly different for slightly different purposes. So those three, the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and then John is the kind of mystic, the soaring, transcendent poet of language. But read the Gospels. That will teach you a great deal. Let me think. The other things are obvious. Pray. Take time to pray. I saw a sign driving into church this morning. It says, choose gratitude. It was out at kind of a rural country church. They have the sermon titles on the roadside each week. I cannot drive by without noticing them. And when I heard it, an image came back from my childhood. I grew up a Southern Baptist, of all things, in eastern North Carolina, just about 30 miles east of Raleigh. I actually grew up in Spring Hope, or Nash County, if any of you know that. And I remember so clearly when I was about, 9 or 10, that Dan Bass, and to be candid, Dan usually wasn't a great teacher. I was bored a lot in the class, but you could tell it was important to him, and he cared for you, and that's where the teaching came through. But I remember clearly Dan Bass came in one day with a kind of a clear flask. It's like almost like a flower vase, and maybe a vase rather than the flask, but a clear container. And he had it half full, and the water was like, I don't remember, blue or purple, something like that. And he said, is this glass half full or half empty? Well, just a whole debate went on in the class if it was half full or half empty. And, and then he says at the end, what is important is where you focus your attention. If you focus on the part of the glass that is full, or if you focus your attention on the part that's empty. During this time when there can be anxiety and we're missing a lot of things in our lives can feel empty, let us remember what is there, what is full, and let us choose. It is a choice, it's an action, it's behavior. Let us choose gratitude. Glad that you're able to join us.
Thank you so much, Father Earl, and we will see you on Sunday and next Wednesday. Take good care.
Take care. God bless.